That's why he's gone, without question. Thanks. 718-937-6666. We go to a break. We'll get back with our final portion right after this on The Fan. WFA. For a pair of tickets to tomorrow night's Game 2 of the American League Division Series. Kevin Apier for the Angels. Andy Pettit for the Yanks. So keep listening for your next chance to win between 4 and 5. It's all from New York's Automotive and Diesel Institute and your flagship station for New York sports, The Fan, Sports Radio 66 WFAN in New York. How about we'll take one call before Eddie? Good idea, eh? Tony from Hawthorne. Hello, Tony.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Love the way you do the Yankee games.
Thank you, sir.
Two points. You know, they talked a lot about Miguel Tejada and Soriano winning the MVP. Has anybody looked at Bernie Williams at all?
No. He's been totally overshadowed on his own team by Giambi and Soriano, but he had a heck of a year. 100 runs, 100 RBIs, and 200 hits. That's a heck of a year.
And set a tied about 9 records that go back to the 30s.
Right.
Just because he had 19 homers, he doesn't even get... All right. Anyway, and as far as the Met thing goes, it's got to be Chambliss. Everybody's overlooking this guy for years.
Oh, I would love that.
I mean, he's the hitting coach for the Mets, isn't he?
Yes.
Why not go within the organization? I love Buck, but like one of the callers said before, every time he gets there, he wins after he leaves.
Well, but he got him to the play. He got 2 teams to the playoffs. No, Chris should be a manager, and I hope he gets consideration. But you know what I think, and I'm sure you think the same thing. Thanks, Tony. This time around, they fired Valentine because they're in New York with the Yanks. They have to win, and they have the players. So they're not going to look at a first-year manager with his debut. They're going to look. They're going to look for a finished product. And in Tom Kelly and Felipe Alou, and with Buck, there's no question that's a finished product. Do you guys want to go to Ed now? You all set? Okay. Well, before the Minkman at 3, let's go to Shea before the press conference begins. And here is Ed Coleman of the Mets and WFAN.
Hello, John. How are you?
Good. What's going on? What are people saying?
Well, I think everyone's just kind of waiting at this point in time. I will tell you this. That's a little bit interesting from other press conferences. Usually you have follow-ups and, after-the-fact interviews and one-on-ones. There will be none of that today. We're told that Fred Wilpon will speak, make a statement, then be available for questions at the podium, and then Steve Phillips will be available for questions at the podium as well. But there will be no one-on-ones afterwards or group sessions or that kind of thing that you usually have.
As long as they're going to have a field questions, because they have to field questions.
Absolutely.
Now, I always laugh at that a lot of coaches in all sports or managers, get very angry at these press conferences and get nasty or storm off because a tough question is asked. Don't they ever see the presidential news conferences? You can ask the President of the United States the toughest questions, and he has to answer them. So Wilpon and Phillips have to be there to answer the question of why, basically.
Well, Fred Wilpon issued a statement earlier today, and he said that he had met with Bobby this morning, and told him after that meeting he had searched his soul a lot and decided it was in the best interest to make a change. He said it was a very painful decision, but he felt it was necessary, and we'll, I guess, find out a little bit more why he feels it was necessary. They said a search for his successor begins immediately, and Steve Phillips is going to be in charge of that, so this will be Steve Phillips' call, I would imagine, with approval. It says it is subject to Fred's final approval, so as everything is here in this organization, it all goes through him. Contracts go through him, and I'm sure the new manager of this team will go through him as well. But
well, if I was Fred Wilpon, it would go through me. I mean, he doesn't want to waste a year, and that's why they made the move on Valentine. Obviously, they realized he had lost the team, and the team probably wouldn't play for him. So Steve Phillips has to find the guy, but Wilpon has to approve it. I would agree with that. It's my money, and boy, it's his money. Now that he bought out Doubleday, boy, I'd want to make sure of that guy. And also, there are so many heavyweights out there. You know, I mentioned Tom Kelly and Buck Showalter before. Oh, I hear now, I can hear it that they're coming in.
Jay is at the podium, and Fred Wilpon has stepped to the podium.
Good
So we're going to go
afternoon,
out there.
I think the press release was given out by Jay, and therefore I'm open to answer any questions you have for me, or any questions you might have for Steve. Shoot.
Fred, what was Bobby's reaction to the talk?
He was very professional. He was disappointed, and I think he was mostly disappointed because he wasn't able to bring this organization to conclusion this year like he did in the 2000. So I think that it was some personal disappointment, but some professional disappointment as well.
So when did you come to this decision?
Pardon me, David?
When did you come to this decision?
Basically, not until the last day or two. It's not that I haven't been thinking about it, but I came to the decision in the last couple of days.
Fred, what made you change your mind?
What made me change my mind was the performance, primarily the performance of the last 2 months. I just felt that it was something I had to change my mind about. Obviously, that was not my intention. Otherwise, I would have never made the statements I made. My intention was absolutely to see that Bobby and Steve would be here. But in the last couple of weeks, I just felt it was in the best interest of this organization. And going forward in 2003 and then thereafter to have a new manager. Painful, I must say, because I have the deepest respect for Bobby personally, as I said in the release, and so it was a very painful decision. TJ?
Fred, how long you said that Steve and Bobby were sort of in this together? Why ultimately Bobby and not Steve? It didn't have anything to do with Steve at all?
I think, TJ, that was the hard part, obviously, and the decision to say that, I hate to put blame anywhere, but the fact is that in the best interest of the organization, I thought that we had put very good players in place. They did not play very well. They never came together. And I thought that the way to get this to jumpstart for next year would be to have a manager who might be able to motivate these players. As you know, we're going to make some changes, but we do have some excellent players who are coming back to us, a very good core of guys, and a manager that can come in and motivate them and get the most out of some veterans and young players.
Fred, when you talk about motivation, do you think it's the guy you need to motivate, or is it maybe the guys just aren't as good as you thought they were?
I clearly believe the guys are as good as we all thought they were. I think if this were January of this year, you could have voted Steve Phillips as the senator from New Jersey, your town, because we all thought that we had a very competitive team. I still believe we have a very competitive team, although I certainly am very disappointed in the way they played this year. And I think they're going to play far, far better next year. And I think giving them that shot, I thought it was important to change at this point, or compelling to change at this point.
Do you have a timetable to get the next man in place?
As soon as possible. That's why this decision was made today. I actually told Steve and Jeff last night, and then this morning I came in. I met with Bobby at 10 o'clock this morning. We finished about 10:30, quarter to 11. Pulled all of our staff together because I called the commissioner and asked him when I could do this, because there's some rules about that. And since he knew the decision was made, he said, do it as soon as possible. That's why we chose now, so we can get on. When we leave here, we're going back into a planning session. And we've got a plan for next year. We've got to do whatever we have to do for next year.
Fred, your statements and actions, Bobby's statements and actions during the whole marijuana controversy, did that contribute at all? He made some comments and then he changed them at the news conference. And
Not at all.
how much of that had to do with this?
Not at all. It had nothing to do with it. This is really a performance issue, and the disappointment of the performance of the team, performance that everybody expected a competitive team, and we didn't have one.
And how about the fact that the players were doing that? I mean,
No. The players, I have said before, there is no evidence whatsoever that there is any kind of widespread pot in the Mets organization or on the Mets team or anywhere out. And I think it's very, very sad that the whole team and the whole organization has been painted by a brush that isn't factual and not true. And as I said previously, you know, some of these guys that I know quite well in the clubhouse who are great family men, their kids are asking them questions.
Fred, did you canvass any of your players about this?
I can't hear you, Bob.
Did you canvass or pick the brains of any of your veteran players about this decision, or was it made at the highest level?
I talked to lots of people. I talked to some players. I talked to many people in and out of baseball in helping make this decision. But this is my decision, Bob. I mean, you can't go anywhere else but know that I made this decision, and that's my job. That's my responsibility.
Fred, did you have a feeling that it would be a problem? I mean, having talked to players, that it'd be a problem if Bobby came back to manage the same group?
No, because what you're suggesting is that players said something negatively. I'm not suggesting that at all.
You said that a lot of this had to do with poor play over the last 2 months. But within the last 2 months, probably within the last 2 weeks, you've been quoted in a variety of places saying that Bobby would be back. So I'm wondering, is there a moment in the last week or 10 days that changed it? Because it was terrible for the first 4 months, it was terrible for the last 2 months. Did something happen in the last week that made you say, I've got to do this?
No, it's a culmination, but the last 2 months were a time when I thought we could pull out of it. We had lots of things happen in terms of losses in the last 2 months, and 15 games, and then here at the end, 6 games, and I just didn't see the energy that was needed. And Bobby tried his hardest. There's no question about that. So I'd rather not place fault on Bobby and say we didn't do it as an organization. I'm part of that. Everybody standing here is part of that. And we failed in 2002 to produce what we thought we could produce. And now we have to get on and see that we can do that in 2003.
John.
Joe, listen, let him finish. Okay.
Again, you brought up some things like the losing streak, etc. That fell into a period where after that, I mean, I know personally, I talked to him, but you said this man will be back as the manager next season. So you had some postseason discussions within meetings. Did he say something in one of the meetings that kicked you off? Did something after the pot smoking stuff that he did at did something happen recently that made you, I mean, essentially, Fred, you're publicly a liar right now for what you've said over the last 2 months. I mean, can you explain what made you change your mind?
Well, number one, it'd be easy make me to say that there was something that happened. There was no one thing that happened, and I did not lie because I was telling the absolute truth when I talked to you. I don't remember when that was, or anybody else. That's what I felt. So to say what you just said, Joel, is just not fair. I don't lie. I did change my mind. That change of mind occurred probably over the last 3 or 4 days, and I made my mind up about a day or so ago. That's not a lie. That's telling the truth as to what I felt when I talked to you, or whomever else I might have talked to.
As you weigh this decision, how much do you think about the relationship between Bobby and Steve? A lot has been said about how rocky it has been this year. I'm wondering if you consider this as well.
How much of that was part of the decision?
Yeah.
Well, I think that is always part of a decision, but recognize that these two guys didn't have to be the best friends. It's only 2 years ago that they stood up on this podium and were vying for the World Championship. Their relationship was pretty much the same then as it is now. I think it's overplayed, the fact that they had this contentious relationship. I think that they worked together. They may not have been guys that went out to dinner together, but they worked together. I had many, many meetings with both of them. They were both professional at the meetings. I never saw them screaming at each other or anything like that. So I don't want to place it on the fact of their individual inability to get along.
You say it was overplayed, and that's kind of a new judgment thing, but didn't they have a contentious relationship? Wouldn't you say that they did not have a very even relationship?
I said that. I said that they didn't have kind of relationship where you go out to dinner or anything, but I think they work together professionally. There are a couple of teams in the playoffs right now that the general manager and the manager don't even talk to each other. Or one. I mean, so they're very successful teams, though.
Right. There came to the conclusion that you wanted to make game changes. Did they thought that they could be game changes starting over? They made a decision that you're going to make game changes. Did any thought that they could free sweeping change?
Yes. But in my view, Steve has done a creative job. Steve and his staff have done a creative job putting this team on the field. I think it's a good team. I think they're good players. They have not played well. I shouldn't say it's a good team because they haven't played well, but they're good players. And I think they will play well together. I think we may need some changes, as some of you have suggested, but I think they will play well together. And I felt that the change that was necessary at this time was a change on the field.
Fred, will you make a commitment to Steve beyond next year, this contract in the final season? Is there a commitment to him beyond that?
No.
Fred, do you think the players are getting a free pass on this?
Well, the players are just as responsible for what happened this year as everybody else in the organization. I said the organization shouldn't get a free pass, and you guys are not giving us a free pass, so which is correct.
But one guy's paying the price.
Pardon me?
But one guy is paying the price.
Well, but you have to do what you think is right for us for an organization. If I thought something else was right, I would do that something else. I think this is the appropriate decision to make at this time.
Is it Steve's call who the next manager is? Is that Steve's call who the next manager is? Does he make the hire?
No, it is Steve and his staff that are going to do all of the assembling and the interviewing and making the recommendation, and I will be in accord with that recommendation.
TJ? Right, since you do owe Bobby a year's salary, is that going to prevent you from going after any top flight candidates for manager should any become available?
Absolutely not.
You had a question over here in the front.
Any thought on any candidates, and what's the future of the coaching staff?
We don't know. It depends upon the candidates and depends upon the person that becomes the manager, and then his discussions with Steve as to who the coaches should be.
Matt, in back.
Aside from someone who can motivate the players, what other traits are you looking for in your
Well, I think someone that and this is not to say that they did not respect Bobby, but someone that they could respect, someone that probably is not necessarily a very young manager for young players, but someone who can deal with veteran players as well as young players, because we're going to have that combination. And I think those are some of the traits. We're going to sit down right after this meeting and do a specification of the kind of manager that we would like here.
Is that what you think happened with Bobby, that his success earlier was that he didn't have as many veterans, and that picked him up now this year, last year, having a roster more veterans? And what changed?
I don't think so. I told Bobby this a week or two ago, and I do see Bobby was, of all the people I know quite a few people who were involved in 9/11, who were affected by 9/11. I don't know of anybody that was more affected or did more with respect to 9/11. And he has my undying gratitude for that, just as a citizen. I just don't know whether there was something different this year, but I would tell you that I think Bobby could manage veterans as well as rookies.
Andy, you had a question?
Sure. Fred, does the new manager have to have major league managerial experience, or are you open to a candidate who hasn't had major league experience yet?
Managing, you mean?
Managing, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're open to all candidates. We're going to go through the process and try to pick the best person for the New York Mets in 2003.
You mentioned before jump-starting the team for next year. Do you regret not doing this earlier? Maybe at some point during the season you might have been able to salvage it?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because I didn't come to that conclusion then. I mean, I can honestly tell you that's the way I felt. I tried very hard. I met with these guys many, many more times than I would have normally in trying to see how we can get out of this malaise, listening to them, cajoling them, counseling them in certain areas, and we just couldn't do it.
Fred, what was different about Bobby this year? You said that he was different.
I don't know. I don't know. Whether it was the effect of 9/11 or whether it was, I don't know. I think Bobby Valentine will go on and manage somewhere else and do very well.
John?
Are there in-house candidates? Are there any in-house candidates? Your coaching staff or anybody else in the organization?
I don't know that yet. I mean, yes, there are, but I mean, I don't know. We haven't put a list together yet, John.
Jerry?
Was Bobby surprised by your decision?
No, I don't think he was surprised. I think he was disappointed. He did say that he had the feeling, and when he talked to Mary this morning, he just had the feeling that that he was going to be terminated.
Had someone from your family spoken to Mary, or was this kind of
Pardon me?
Why did he say why he had that feeling?
He didn't say.
When did you call this meeting?
Were any other positions within the organization offered in?
We haven't talked about that. I said to Bobby, I think he ought to take a few days off and then call me, and then we would get together and have lunch and talk about that and what he plans to do and where he plans to go and so forth.
When did you call the meeting with him? When was that? Did you call him last night to meet this morning, or did you call him this morning?
No, the meeting that we had on for 10 o'clock was made a few days ago. It was a staff meeting with the baseball department where we have been meeting frequently and talking about who should go and who should stay, and sounds like something I just heard at services. Who should go and who should stay. Pardon me?
Will Jeff have a larger role in the front office now coming off this past year?
No. Oh, I mean coming off this past year, or, well, Jeff, I described what Jeff's role would be when we took over the full ownership of the team. And he's the COO of the team. He's working with me on every aspect. He's with Steve and myself and staff meetings and with the business staff, and he's trying to put the organization together. But he will have no further increased role because Bobby is leaving.
Fred, you said this was your decision, but was it the recommendation of your general manager to do this?
Was it the recommendation of the general manager?
Steve, to fire Bobby.
I didn't ask him.
Has he made that recommendation in the past, or recently?
No.
You know what? Why don't we bring Steve up for a couple of questions now?
You are listening to the Mets press conference. Fred Wilpon, the owner of the team, has been
Phillips is
speaking.
coming to
Steve
the
Phillips,
microphone.
general manager, is coming. This is WFAN in New York.
John.
Steve, Fred just said that you didn't make the recommendation. So when he told you what his decision was, what was your reaction?
Well, Fred told me yesterday, late afternoon, what the decision was, and I told him I had agreed with it at that point. I think this was clearly Fred's decision, and one that he had made early on, that made a statement that he wasn't going to make and then had changed his mind. And I believed it was the right one for the organization.
Did you feel like you got the
Well, look, we all know that when we do these jobs that we're being evaluated upon our performance, whatever that performance level or that standard is to be. So we obviously didn't perform well, and certainly we all accept some level of responsibility for that failure. And now we're all faced with that same challenge to try to move forward and improve it. So certainly I'm not surprised hearing that Mr. Wilpon considered every possibility, because I think it's the right thing for him to do.
Why do you feel it's the right?
For which point?
Why do you feel like firing Bobby was the right decision?
Well, I just think it goes to the performance on the field. I don't think we performed. I tend to agree, and that the quality of the players and the talent that we have on the field, that we underachieved this year, and that there's more to get out of the players that we did have on the club. And I think it just goes strictly to the performance of our club for this season.
Was that something you would have recommended earlier in the season, Steve, or you know, your opinion?
It's hypothetical. If I were asked, what would I have answered? It's not an appropriate question. No.
Steve, did you want to make this move earlier this season? Did you want?
It was not my decision to make. I think that Mr. Wilpon made that clear early on, that he was going to bring both of us back, and that was a statement early. And I think it was, at that point, it was his decision to make, and also his right to change his mind on.
But you don't say anything then as a GM as the season's going on. You don't say, I think that we could turn things around by firing Bob.
If I thought it was an appropriate thing to do, I would have, and I think that Fred gave us all every opportunity to try to do what we could to turn this around this year, and I think Bobby was working every angle he possibly could to try to get this team back on track. I think the effort was there, and the desire to there, and the caring was there for him to try to do that.
TJ.
Steve, do you think your relationship with Bobby got to the point where it was no longer manageable?
I don't think that's the case. In fact, probably 2 weeks ago, somebody in here commented to me that they actually sense that our relationship is better than it's ever been. So, I think that inherent in the positions of the manager and general manager, there are points where you're going to disagree just based upon short-term and long-term issues. I think there were times that Bobby and I did disagree, and some of which are well publicized, some of which happen behind closed doors, but I think that in the end, in order to make the best decisions, you have to have some level of disagreement in order to consider every angle of the decision-making process. But our relationship wasn't any different today than it was when we went to the World Series in 2000. So I think that it was functional. It wasn't, as Fred said, one in which we'd go out to dinner all the time.
Joe.
Do you think it's bizarre that the general manager not be consulted on the future of the manager?
I think that Fred and I have a lot of meetings, so we talk about a number of different things, but the point-blank question was not asked. I think that I'm sure that he could sense my feelings or sense the issues that existed, but I think it became clear that it had become a decision that Fred was going to control and make. David.
How long did you then have those feelings that this was the right move? Fred said it last 2 days. How long did you felt that way?
Again, I'm not going to go back and go through every thought that I've had over the course of the season.
Steve,
yes.
Did you compile in your mind others at this time, and I'd like to get your thoughts, that's of anyone right now, but how about you having now known since yesterday, did you begin to make a list in your mind of things you'd like to go after?
Yeah, I have. I've started to at least give some thought to candidates that are out there. Obviously, there's a whole pool of people to choose from, some who have experience, some who have not. And I think that right now, I think that what we have to do is put a larger list together and then try to make some decisions to whittle it down from there.
Steve, when you talk about performance on the field, when ball players get to this level, is there really much more a manager can do when a guy's batting .230 or when a team is making plenty of errors in the field?
Well, I think that the issues are individual and team oriented. I think that certainly the work that can be done with individuals is hitting and working with the things that they need to do to try to improve. I think that I think collectively there's the team environment and how do you put that together and how do you try to pull it all together. So I think that certainly the effort was there from Bobby to try a lot of different things to turn it around. We just didn't have the success to get it going.
John?
I think you supported Bobby through the years in terms of when an issue would come up, something had been made as a Bonilla issue and some other issues, sometimes players would speak out against him, and you didn't rush in there to criticize the players maybe, and you also seemed to make decisions on the coaching staff, and people said that you were in the clubhouse a lot. So do you feel that you had a lot of the control and you really supported that?
I would tell you that I stand here and can honestly say to you that I have done what I think in every situation was the right situation to do for the organization. I think that there are times where I think I probably was in a spot that I had to, if I did something in one way, it could be deemed not in the best interest of the organization. But I think that I tried to always answer questions or respond to situations or issues in the best interest of the organization. Sometimes did it come across that we weren't on the same page? I believe that's true. But I think that in managing situations, I'm not sure there's always one right answer in how you handle it.
Steve, do you feel that you're less responsible than Bobby for the conversation?
I think that's an answer for ownership. I don't think that's necessarily my evaluation to make. I think that I know what we put into putting this club on the field. I know what my view is of the caliber of talent that we had on the field. And, I know I felt the same pain we all did at the frustrations and disappointments of the season. But again, those evaluations aren't necessarily for me to make, and certainly not publicly. I think that they're for those people that evaluate me.
Steve, how annoyed were you flip-flop that Bobby did last week with his drug innuendos?
I don't think it's appropriate to go through and go through every issue that's out there. I think that the unfortunate thing is that story ended up, I think, casting aspersions on everybody, and I'm comfortable with the way that it was resolved in the end.
Joel, you get two more questions, Joel.
The team has played 10 games under 500 like it did, but there has been no off-field issues. Saying when Alomar hadn't fought, the marijuana story wouldn't have come up, etc., that involved this team. Would Bobby still be around?
I can't really, can't say, Joel, because I don't really know. I haven't thought about it in that context. You're suggesting that it was the issues, not the play, or you made it a little better play and less issues. I was hoping that we could establish some rhythm at the end, the last couple of months. And although it still would have been a lousy season and a failure, that we could have looked to hope for 03. The problem I was having as time went on was there enough of that left, and could we show the public that we had good players and that it was just aberrational that they didn't play well this year?
Here, one last question for either Fred or Steve. Okay.
Fred, he didn't come to you that he made a recommendation to terminate Bobby?
I didn't have to. So I'm glad not to have had to get to that point to address it. I think but I do, as I said, stand by it, that I think it was the right decision to make.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming, everybody. Thank you.
That is the wrap-up of the press conference. Steve Phillips just finished answering the last question. Fred Wilpon answered many before that on the firing of Bobby Valentine here today. The search begins immediately, and that will be upstairs shortly after we break here. They will start sitting down and putting down the requirements and the prerequisites that they are looking for in a new manager, and the search will go on. Steve Phillips did say that he had a few names in mind, and I'm sure that some people will be contacted if they can be, and others who might be still gainfully employed at this point in time might be contacted at a later time. But at this point in time, press conference is over. Bobby Valentine no longer the manager of the New York Mets. We are going to take a break, and right after we hear these commercial words, we will head things over to Yankee Stadium. Mike and the Mad Dog will be there for the Yankees-Angels playoff game number 1 later on tonight.
WFAN New York.